Okay, Manny. Who are we probing today? Oh, come on, Manny. You said I could probe somebody.
Hey, this is Manny Moonraker, and this is UFO report number 65. I welcome you back. This is a Thursday report. And I decided that today I wanted to focus on the non-rubber dickers. That's right, there will be no rubber dicking on this episode. Instead, we're going to focus on the everyday Joe, the people who are out there investigating this phenomena and get zero praise, not a zilch, not a single bit. They're not made the UFO Investigator of the Year. No, they're not band boys. They're not going around hoping to catch a naked photo of a stepchild. They are regular old guys that basically decided to dedicate their life to investigate the phenomena without any real payout. They just did it because they were curious. And I just happened to come across two UFO stories about two gentlemen who went on a similar path of investigating what was, for the most part, undefined and unacknowledged. And no, they did not form a secret cabal. They were just looking for the truth. The first story comes out of Ohio. And the title for this story is UFOs at Wright-Patterson. Local man said he went on a quest to find the truth. And this was no ordinary quest, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, rubber dickers and not. This guy's name is Raymond Szymanski. Raymond spent 39 of his 65 years investigating the claims of alien EBEs, remains, and, leftovers from the crash at Roswell ending up at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The first thing the article comes right out and say is that he never saw ET at the base. Not once. Now, he retired in 2011, and all that time there, he says he really could not find definitive evidence that this happened. But he just didn't show up on the scene and decide to make a mess of things. The guy was there. He was at the base for 39 years. He is himself a Dayton, Ohio area resident, and he is a former Air Force Research Laboratory Sensor Directorate senior engineer. Holy mother of God! I mean, imagine writing that title over and over again. This is ridiculous. Anyway, so he wrote a book. It's called 50 Shades of Grays, Evidence of Extraterrestrial Visitation to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and Beyond. He says the book is actually a documentary for his quest for the truth, where the stories I heard about Wright-Patterson true. What about some of the other famous places? Because he really didn't stop just at Wright-Patterson. Mr. Szymanski had a definite need to feed and to discover and answer the truth about UFOs around the world, not just Wright-Patterson. He felt that the Air Force took these situations seriously enough to the extent that they had a collection and analysis of programs for nearly a quarter of a century. So certainly the UFO phenomena was an issue for them. And of course we know Project Blue Book and all the other nonsense projects that really didn't tell us a damn thing. But he says there was an effort there. And it was enough of an effort to pique his curiosity into what really was going on, especially since Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was attached to the situation at Roswell. But what's funny is that in writing his book, he really did not set out to write the book at all. He says there was a tipping point for him. He had conducted so many years of research, and then in 2015, he did one visit to one UFO incident. That UFO incident was regarding a former logger that claimed to have been abducted in 1975 by a UFO at the Apache-Sitgreaves Forest in Arizona. We UFO nuts know this guy as Travis Walton. It was Travis Walton's story that actually convinced this author, this researcher, to go ahead and finally document his research. And you would think that someone who spent so many years researching the topic and was actually at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and would come up empty-handed, you would think that his point of view was that the idea of UFOs and ETs is 4.2 too far. In the foreword to his book, he actually says that after all the research, he's not really sure if there is anything at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base related to ETs and recovered aircraft. And really, that's a lot to say because the guy's there. He wasn't there just 1 week, a month. He didn't go back periodically. He was there for 39 years. 39 years, and he could not figure out whether or not this was true. That speaks volumes. Volumes to people who have never even been on the base, who've never even seen the entrance to the base, but can tell you definitively that the Roswell crash items are there, and they were housed there, and they were there for a while, and maybe they went to Area 51, or maybe they're still there under an underground vault, but they've never seen the darn base. They probably never even went to Ohio. This guy was there. He dedicated his life to it, and he's not convinced. But he's not convinced either way. He just could not find enough evidence to give you a definitive answer. And he continues to say that the Roswell alien thing is a little squishy. He says, but there's a difference from him believing we've been visited and believing in Roswell. He says he's spoken to and interviewed UFO experiencers, and he's entirely and completely convinced that they've had a real encounter. And somewhere along the line, they have encountered alien entities on this planet. So Mr. Szymanski did not earn the UFO Researcher of the Year or of the decade or of the last 4 decades that he spent investigating UFOs in general. And he didn't, like I say, he didn't just stop at Wright-Patterson. You know, he talked about Roswell. He talked about the incident with Travis Walton. He even talked about at one point in this article regarding Rendlesham Forest. The book sounds like it would be a fascinating read. I like this guy because he reminds me of me. Yes, there is no definitive evidence, Stephen Greer. Whether you have a cabal in your mind or not, there isn't definitive evidence. But, like Mr. Szymanski, I can say there is evidence that something is 4.2 too far. The question is, will we ever find out? In our lifetimes or the next? So the link for this article is in the description. Check it out. There's more in the article you can read. He seems like a really cool guy. He's out there doing his thing. But the next guy is just as fascinating. The next UFO story is from a scientist that actually spent 40 years investigating one particular incident. The title for the article is "A Scientist Claims to Have Proved an Alien Spacecraft Landed on Earth After Investigating a Perplexing Case Nearly 40 Years." That's a long time. That's a damn long time. The guy's name is Dr. Errol Farouk, and he published the findings of his investigation into a substance that was actually left behind on the ground by this UFO case. He concluded this in a book, and what his findings basically drove him to is the idea that what was left behind could only be explained by extraterrestrial activity. So in a self-published book, which is called The Compelling Scientific Evidence for UFOs, he is a British-born chemist of Turkish heritage, and he examined the details related to the Delphos UFO case which happened in Kansas on the evening of November 2nd, 1971. Apparently, I've never heard of this incident, but apparently according to the article, it is one of the most compelling evidence for UFO cases recorded to date because it left behind evidence on the ground in a form of a ring where the UFO landed. The main witness for this particular sighting was Ron Johnson. He was 16 at the time, and he was tending to sheep on his family's farm with his dog. Around 7 p.m., he spotted a 6 to 8 foot diameter mushroom-shaped UFO appearing in the night sky. He described it as having multicolored lights, and it hovered about 75 feet away among trees, just about a foot over the ground. He says when it ascended with a blinding light. So of course, after this happened, he went ahead and alerted his parents. By the time they got there, the UFO was gone. However, what they found on the ground was a glowing ring of debris or leftover residue, and where the craft actually landed, and also on the nearby trees. So sample from the soil was collected, and what they found is that the water that was there had some kind of a repellent nature to it within the ring. So these samples were sent to several laboratories to do some kind of research and analysis on them to find out what their chemical composition was. According to UFOcasebook.com, the experience of Ron Johnson still considered as one of the best documented ground trace UFO cases in the past century, and it is still unexplainable by any conventional or earthly means. And UFO Casebook would be happy at this point to read the fact that this particular scientist, Mr. Farouk, has come to the same conclusion, that this is not something that's earthly. So even though the laboratories were not able to fully identify the soil compound, they did recognize that this was a soluble organic compound which is potentially chemiluminescent, which is different from bioluminescent, which bioluminescent is kind of like the fish you see that glow in the dark in the deep reaches of the sea. Well, this is a chemical reaction that's luminescent, that glows. So after finding this out, Dr. Farouk actually came up to three conclusions. And one is this is either a hoax, or it is something that is naturally occurring, or it's a genuine 4.24 UFO incident. He said because of the characteristic of the chemical compound, no way that this could be a hoax, because number one, they couldn't identify what the compound was. So how could anyone use this or even create it and not be able to be identified inside of a laboratory? So this was ruled out as a hoax. He also ruled out the possibility that this was a fungal ring. And he says because of the way that this water-soluble alkali metal salt was not something that you will find in fungi. So listen, this guy went through a scientific approach. He had his evidence, he did his research, and he ruled out basically what this could be. Can't be naturally occurring. It couldn't have been made by man because of the way the compound was put together. So he says that basically the most plausible conclusion is that this is a genuine UFO sighting from something 4.24. And again, these are two guys that have spent decades, one 39 years, one 40 years, investigating UFO sightings. And in a way, I feel bad for them because they've come to the same conclusion we have on this podcast every week. There's just no way to freaking answer this question. You can search, you can research, you can interview people. You can go to these places. Go to Rendlesham, go to Australia, go to Africa where those kids had the incident. Go to Arizona. How many incidents can you visit there? The conclusion is we just cannot come to an answer no matter how much time you spend researching this. And it may just be because we're looking at this from the wrong perspective. But I take my hat off to these guys. These are the guys that this podcast is about. It is the regular person, not the rubber dickers who are trying to, push their ideas on people and pretty much shitting on everybody else. And this is about these guys, Szymanski and Farouk. These are the type of guys that get out there and do it because they know there's a mystery to be solved. Not because they have an agenda or they want to join a secret cabal somewhere. This is the podcast for today. Don't forget to vote for the Rubber Dickies, and I appreciate you guys. Ciao.